Tales from Azeroth. As always, here at the Pig and Whistle in Stormwind, I go through a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. So grab a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy. Today's subject is going to be my life in WoW. So again, it's sort of the average player's, WoW experience. But this is something that I haven't actually done. I haven't gone through my lifespan within WoW. And it spanned every single expansion now with the release of TBC Classic. Obviously, TBC Classic, I haven't had seen the full picture of it yet, so I won't necessarily have the best stories to tell from that era. But I have been in every single expansion since Wrath of the Lich King is when I started, and obviously with Classic and then TBC Classic, I have played through every expansion as it was at the time. So all of these are going to be sort of what I mained, what I did during the expansion, how I felt during the expansion, and just general things within the expansion that I can remember, that kind of thing. We're not going to go really deep into each expansion, what I did in that expansion, etc. Because, to be honest, my memory is awful. I can remember bits and pieces, but not enough for like a full-length podcast, that kind of thing. So it's always best to sort of all bundle it all together, as it were. Obviously, we'll start with the weekly stuff for retail. So the world boss for this week is Nurgash Muckformed and Morgeth. So make sure you head over there, get your anima, and get your potential gear. The mythic affixes for this week are Enraged, Volcanic, Tyrannical, and Tormented. Enraged, just make sure you kill them off. Make sure you kite as a tank when they are low HP. Volcanic, don't get blown up by a volcano underneath your feet. It's not good. It's annoying, and yeah, it's just not fun. Tyrannical, the bosses and the mobs that they spawn. Actually, I believe that they changed that. I believe it is just the bosses now that have increased HP and damage buffs. I believe any mobs spawned from bosses are not given that tyrannical buff anymore. And obviously Tormented being the seasonal affix. You have 4 different more mobs that you can kill, or kill if you wish. They can each drop an anima power, and it helps you throughout the run. And any that you don't kill will empower the final boss with a certain debuff against you. The brawl for this week is Classic Ashran. So this is the Ashran that was in Warlords of Draenor. Obviously we're going to be going over that a bit. But it is the Warlords of Draenor Ashran, so it is a consistent fight, and it can just go on forever, to be honest. And the event for this week is Battleground bonus, so you get 100% more honour in Battlegrounds. Make sure that you're grinding that out, get some of that PvP gear upgraded when possible. So, we obviously start... I don't know where to start with this. Mainly because I started playing World of Warcraft in Wrath of the Lich King, or very late TBC, but the very late TBC I do not remember, honestly. So Wrath of the Lich King is where I sort of started and remember most of my starting days in that expansion. But I will start with Classic, as it makes sense to go through all of the different expansions in order. Now, when we get to Wrath of the Lich King onwards, that's when I was a newer player. So Classic and TBC Classic, I'm very much an experienced player, and yeah, I've been playing for a while. So just take that in, or put that in mind. So for Classic, I main a mage. I play a mage, and I have a druid as my ult. And this was a boomkin. Obviously, they were very looked down upon because of mana problems, that kind of thing. But I made a druid. I like boomkins. I like being a giant chicken. I like throwing star surges, moonfires. I like the aesthetic of a druid, pretty much. And I like the arcane nature of it, wielding, all of them sort of powers. Instead of, the feral kitty form, the tonky bear, that kind of thing, the resto. Even though resto didn't even have a form, which is kind of a let down, to be honest. You would imagine that they have brought that in Classic, but it's in TBC. So I had a mage and a druid, and the raiding side of this was mainly on my mage. So my mage cleared every single piece of content that was within Classic, that was available in Classic, all the way from Ragnaros through the 20-man raids, Ruins of AQ, Zul'Gurub, all the way to Naxxramas, and even down in Kel'Thuzad. I think about 3 or 4 weeks after the release, or after our first run in Naxxramas. Might have been a bit less. I'm pretty sure it was around 3 or 4 weeks. Again, my memory's not great, and this was only like a year ago or something, not even that. This is actually several months ago. So yeah, cleared absolutely everything on my mage. My druid didn't necessarily have the most prolific raiding experience. It was very much an ult that I just hopped on. I wanted the ult to run herbs and stuff like that. So they had a bit of gear. Now they had sort of Blackwing Lair level gear, and this was actually very decent. I had a few bits and pieces for flag running for PvP, and this is what I mainly did on my druid. I did PvP because the enticement of a druid running a Warsong Gulch flag in Classic was amazing. I really loved it, and being on the receiving end of so many good druids in Classic, running the flag against me as a mage, I can't lock down a druid in Classic. They are the one class that I really, and most mages probably had a real tough time killing, as it were. So having a druid of my own to do these sort of things and to be very mobile, very nimble, very quick, it really did intrigue me. Speaking of PvP, I did loads on my mage. Ranking was a big thing in Classic for me. So I didn't go for the crazy rank 14. I didn't necessarily want to lose the spark of PvP for me. So all I did was go up to rank 11. And rank 11 is when you've got, or when you can purchase the tigers and the PvP mounts for your respective faction. So you had the steed, you had the tiger, and you had the ram for Alliance. I'm not too sure about the horde, and I'm not even going to try and guess. But this is where I sort of cut it off, because I like PvP. PvP is the most enjoyable part of World of Warcraft for me, but I couldn't sit there for 8+ hours a day just spamming Battlegrounds. That would really kill my enthusiasm for the game as a whole, plus the PvP aspect of the game. I very much took my time with it. I could have probably done it like 2 months or something quicker if I really pushed, but I did enough to, push the ranks up and up a bit more. And this was peak COVID time, so everyone was at home, everyone was ranking, the brackets were higher than they ever were, going like after COVID stuff, and the lockdown restrictions were eased, and before. So this was peak sort of ranking time for World of Warcraft people in WoW Classic. Now, this really did bring one of my highest points in WoW Classic, and that was purchasing the rank 10 PvP gear, or completing the rank 10 or the rank 7, 8 and 10 PvP gear, PvP set. It was so cool to see, and I still got it of my character in TBC. It's in my bank, and I'm really, really happy about it. I like the colour of it, the blue. I like the way it looked. I like the set bonuses that it gave, and it was decent. It was decent for the tier that we were currently in. I think it was coming into AQ, and it was in between Blackwing Lair and AQ. So I really did have a great time ranking, and that was one of my highest points within the game itself. And another high point within Classic were the sort of PvP tournaments that I had entered. I believe that I lost one of them. I probably repressed that memory, not going to lie. But I believe I lost one of them. Yeah, I lost one, and it was in the final, and it came down to a 1v1 against a warrior. Now, you generally think mage beats warrior, but I had a polymorph that broke early, and yeah, that was the end of that. Nothing that can be done. I wanted to poly to reset. The poly broke early because in Classic, polymorph was a bit weird. It didn't give you a set timer on when it was going to break. So in TBC, it's a set time. It is 10 seconds, and the polymorph will break. In Classic, it's a 50-second countdown, but it can break whenever. So you could get super lucky, and they just sat in a sheep for 40 plus seconds. Or you get really unlucky, it can break within 3 seconds, and you wouldn't have had time to bandage up or get mana back or eat and drink, that kind of thing. And that was just how it was. It was against someone who was rank 14, outgeared me to absolute no end. They outgeared me and my partner, who was my sister at the time. We just lost because he trained her down, killed her, and as a squishy priest, again, he outgeared both of us. It's not going to be the best time. We were so close in winning that. I've actually got a VOD on that and a video, I believe, so definitely check it out if you haven't. But yeah, it's one of them things. I won, I think, either 2 or 3. I think there are about 4 in total, but I'm pretty sure I won the rest of them that I did, which was really nice. I do like PvP, and I especially like being a mage in sort of a 2v2 tournament that is created by either the community, guild, or whatever, and joining in and competing. It was in the Gurubashi arena, and obviously those who lost, died, got rezzed and stuff like that. So these were some really high points, doing the PvP stuff in Stranglethorn Vale. Classic was great. The raiding experience was alright. The ranking was great. Getting that PvP, getting the mounts was perfect. Anything to do with the PvP stuff, I absolutely adored and loved within the Classic era, mainly because I mained Mage, and, it's great fun. That's why I picked Mage and Druid for my classes in Classic. TBC, now we're only in Phase 2 for TBC, so I don't necessarily have as much to go on here. Arenas were obviously brought into TBC. I main Mage once again, and I have a Paladin as my ult character. My Druid is still there, slowly leveling, but Paladin is my main ult for this expansion. So arenas, they're not the same as retail, I will tell you that. Got to make your food, drinks, buff up and all of that. Definitely different. And I feel as if it's a lot more work just to even start the arena than it is to queue up, get in there, and look at sort of talents that you can change on retail compared to making water and then sort of buffing up, and then you've got 10 seconds to strategize what it might be and all of that stuff. I prefer the retail version where you can switch your talents out depending on what composition that you're facing compared to making water and buffing up. And that's my honest opinion about the arenas, and I think that's the way that they've evolved, and I think it's really good in which that they've evolved. Raiding, I've only done a bit of raiding. Again, I'm not a PvEer at heart, I'm very much a PvPer. Raiding's fine. I do enjoy the Carol run with guildies. I've done a Gruul and Mag and stuff like that. So I've done the raids that were put out there. Serpent Shrine Cavern and the Eye, or is it called Tempest Keep? It is called the Eye, but some people might know it as Tempest Keep or whatever. But they're raids that I've not done yet. They're not raids that I'm necessarily interested in doing. I mean, eventually I'll get into them, but the only time that I ever want to raid is if I know the people that I'm raiding with and I enjoy the company that I'm raiding with. Otherwise, it just doesn't make raiding fun. You're sat there for, if it's a progression raid, 3-4 hours, and you're butting heads with people that you don't even know. Whereas if it's a guild event, that kind of thing, you're having fun, you're progressing, you're learning still, but there is no stress within the matter. That's sort of, I'm very picky when it comes to raiding and who I raid with and that sort of thing. So obviously the Mage and Pala are my main and ult. The Pala is the ult choice for this expansion, mainly because of the AoE potential. Now, with Paladin tanking becoming absolutely insane, Paladins have the potential to AoE boost. And this is something that mages could do Paladins could do it in Classic, but mages could do it easier. So, but now it's sort of role reverse, so Paladins can do it a lot easier in some pools, such as Stratholme. Mages can't do that solo, and this is a good money maker, and I always like having gold on my character. I always like having sort of a piggy bank and hoarding some gold for a rainy day. Now, this rainy day has never happened in my WoW career, I will say that, but there's always that thought in the back of my mind of what if, that kind of thing. What if I just want to make an ult and absolutely twink it out with absolutely everything, that kind of thing. It's not happened, but it might do in the future. I might just have like a project or something that I want to do with a character. So boosting is obviously something that I have noticed within TBC. I've sold boosts, I've bought boosts as well. Now, boosts obviously being like Stratholme boost for gold. This is obviously, it's a good way to make gold if you're the booster, and a good way to level up if you're the boostee. I do it personally because there's a threshold that I get to around the level 50 mark where I don't necessarily like the quests that I do. This is Ungoro quests. Is it Badlands? No, not Badlands. It's Blasted Lands. That's the one. Them sort of quests where they just kill scorpions and that kind of thing. I don't necessarily enjoy them, so I push a few extra levels by getting boosted. And this leads me on to the Plaguelands and quests like leading into there. And that's where I pick the quest back up and carry on my journey and stuff like that. So I think boosting is very nice in TBC. I think it's taken a step back from Classic. Every time you log in, you see about 5 boosts being advertised. So I think that that's a healthy thing to see not as many boosts within the game, or not at least advertised consistently in looking for group chat. But I think it is very much useful if people want to skip that extra bit and also make some gold, because that's how I make my gold, to be honest. Wrath. Now, Wrath is my very, very first expansion that I remember a little bit well. Again, TBC I started, but very first expansion that I experienced fully. So I made my character, and my very first character I made with my dad. And my dad, I don't know how old I was actually at the time. Wrath came out in about 2008. Oh my god, I was about 10. Yeah, I was about 10 years old. So I've made a character, and I've named it after myself. I've named this character after myself, or my shorter name, my nickname. And it's just very funny because I've had that character ever since the game started. I don't even level this character anymore, by the way. It's my dad's character now. I don't know why. But my very first character on my own was a druid. And this druid was called Perfecto. It was an awful name. I'm just going to say it. It was an awful name. I don't know what I was thinking, but yeah. Now, druids, again, I've always liked druids from the very start. I always liked how they've played. I've always liked the sort of lore behind them, the spells and all of the cast and stuff, the fact that they can do everything, a little bit of everything, that is. So, Druid was my main for Wrath of the Lich King. I do not remember having any ults in this time period. I remember just playing my Druid consistently every day, just logging on that Druid and doing nothing else. It was probably doing Battlegrounds, to be honest. Arenas were obviously around in Wrath of the Lich King, and that caught my attention. And this caught the attention of, again, my sister. And my sister made a Druid as well. So we would queue up arenas as 2 druids, and the strat, which I think is still an amazing strat, by the way, is we would run in, she would basically be cannon fodder. So she would survive as long as she could, and if I hadn't killed something, by the time she died, we'd basically lose. It was that kind of thing. So it was an absolute flawless strat. We clearly went unbeaten. everyone was looking to sort of hire us for the best teams, WoW Arena teams at the time, obviously. It was an absolutely insane strat, groundbreaking. But this is a time period where druids were very powerful. Feral druids were very powerful. They had very good off heals and stuff like that. They could go toe to toe with Blood Death Knights, and Blood Death Knights were the bane of absolutely everyone's existence. It was absolutely infuriating. I had I think about a 20 to 30 minute arena against 2 Blood Death Knights solo. So we got in the game. It was in the I forget what it was called, but it's in the arena that's no longer in the game, but it rose up. You were in like your little chamber and it rose up into the middle of the arena, and there were pillars going up and down constantly and stuff like that. I don't remember the name of it, but it's not in the game anymore. It was quite a nice concept arena, to be honest, but you started so close to each other, it was unreal. Like, no rogues could get any saps or anything. It was quite unbalanced. They just had to move the things a little bit further away, I think, but oh well. So we're in this arena. We apply our strat. You know, it's 2 Blood Death Knights against 2 Feral Druids. Basically, we throw ourselves at them. My sister dies, and I kill a Blood Death Knight, I think, 5 seconds after. So it's a 1v1 against a Blood Death Knight, and these Death Knights were absolutely insane at the time. They constantly healed. They out-healed everyone's damage, pretty much. Feral Druids were constantly healing, and it was sort of hit-and-run tactic for both parties. This just went on for 20-30 minutes. It was absolutely insane. In the end, I won it, and that's the only thing I remember about it. It went on for such a long time. It was 2 Blood Death Knights, and that was it. And the arena that it was in. I can't remember how it ended. I can't remember what was going on. I just can't. All I remember is that I won, and that's the thing that that's the main point of the arena, to be honest, that you win. Arenas, this is where it started for PvP for me. It was very enjoyable. I liked the sort of just... It mattered what you did in an arena, because it's 2 people, 3, 5 people. The more and more numbers, the less interested I get in PvP, to be honest. So like rated battlegrounds, it's not necessarily as fun for me. The lower number of people in arenas intrigue me more, because your actions matter so much more, and you don't necessarily have to rely on, like in a battleground, 14 other people. Instead, you have to rely on 2 other people. So the chance of you messing up as a team are a lot slimmer and stuff like that. So arenas really did grab my attention in Wrath, and this is sort of where it started. I did do a bit of raiding in Wrath on my druid as well, actually, and I actually killed the Lich King. I actually killed... Now, this isn't heroic, this isn't anything like that. This was just standard 25-man, like, Lich King. And I'm really proud of it, because that was my first ever raid, I think. That's the raid that I remember the most coming out. You know, the Ice Crown Citadel. I remember it being released. I remember doing, not the Pit... Forge of Souls, Pit of Sauron, and Halls of Reflection, them 3 dungeons. I remember going into ICC constantly, week in, week out, and I remember having some fun, getting some gear and stuff like that. But I remember the Lich King fight. I remember the Lich King fight still to this day. I know what tactics he used, I know where to position him, I know the phases, the different phases, and everything. It was good. I really enjoyed that bit of raiding, and that is the first boss that I remember killing very clearly in my mind, to be honest. So I'm moving on to Kata. Now, Kata's a bit of a weird one, to be honest. There's not much I remember in Cataclysm. I remember that Druid was still my main. I remember new dungeons being released, such as, I believe it was Slag Pits or something. Something like that. It was in Blackrock Mountain. It might just be Upper Blackrock Spire again, but you know. I don't remember much in Kata. That's the thing. Kata was a very uneventful expansion for me. I'm not sure why, and I don't really know how that's possible. It's almost like I've had 2 years of my memory wiped out. It's really weird. But I know that Druid was my main. I know my sister started to make a transition to her main that she is now, which is Priest, and the Druid sort of got left behind in Wrath of the Lich King. But that's all I can remember, really. I don't remember doing arenas. I don't remember sort of playing around with my talents at all. It's just sort of a blank slate in my mind, and I don't quite understand it. I think it's because it was such a drastic change. You know, the world that I vaguely remember in Wrath of the Lich King being completely changed in Cataclysm, so it's sort of a brand new leveling experience. It's almost as if my first expansion was Cata and Wrath of the Lich King, because Cata was so drastically different in the world that we already had leveling, that kind of thing. So, yeah, not much on Cata, to be honest. And to be honest, I'm not too upset about it. I don't deem Cata as one of the better expansions. I don't think I would have enjoyed it. Let's just say that. Mists of Pandaria. This one's a bit of a curveball, to be honest. So, I switched mains in this time. I mained a Priest. And I sort of bounced between all the different specializations. I think it was mainly Shadow, and it might have been Holy, but I think I dabbled in a bit of Disc Priest as well. And I also had an Arms Warrior. And the only thing I can remember from this expansion is obviously the professions. I remember doing a lot of tailoring on my Priest. I remember the half-heal farming, the farm that you were given in the zone that's below Valley of the Four Winds. And I remember having to go to that farm, constantly doing some cooking training and stuff like that. And I remember Arms Warriors slapped in arenas in Mists of Pandaria. I remember just absolutely walking into arenas constantly and just bashing people around the head with an axe and stuff like that. And there would just be one shot. It would just be absolutely insane. It was great fun. That's probably why I picked up Warrior. I got killed by it instantly as a Priest, and I just thought, that looks fun. Let me do that. So, it's one of them things. Again, this expansion didn't necessarily hold a lot for me. It is quite far in the past, so it's tough for my memory to, turn its cogs and figure out what happened back then. But all I remember is dabbling in a lot of Priest and Warrior arenas. Nothing too fancy. And, yeah, just basically spending my days in arenas. That was it. I remember flying from Shrine to the PvP vendor to the Shrine, and just going back and forth, constantly killing this one water elemental that was in the mountains, like, en route, because it was a rare, and it can drop stuff. So I was like, oh, that looks good. This little star icon on my map, I was like, I may as well kill it. I'm going past. That's the only thing I remember about Mop, really. Oh, I do remember getting the serpents, the jade serpents and stuff like that from the Reputation. That was actually a farm that I did constantly and I enjoyed. Timeless Isles, again, was very good as well, but it wasn't something that captured my imagination as much as just doing arenas and stuff like that. Moving on to Draenor. Now, WoD was something. We'll say that. Content that it brought out was amazing, but there was very much a lack of content during Warlords of Draenor. So in Draenor, I went to a mage as my main, and this mage I have to this day. It's a little gnome, always worn the same sort of, clothing, little crimson fell hat, that sort of idea. You get the picture probably with this little, top hat. But mage was something that always intrigued me. Polymorphs, the different spells and stuff like that, or the different spell classes, so Frost, Arcane Fire, etc. And mage was something that I always wanted to play, but I didn't necessarily want to switch midway through. So Warlords of Draenor is when I started. Now, mage obviously had a very interesting talent within this time period, and it was called Prismatic Crystal. Now, what this crystal did is you put it on the floor and you attacked it. You attacked the crystal, and this crystal would deal 30% more damage than what it was taking, So if you did 1,000 damage, then you'd do 1,300 damage. That kind of thing. It would pulsate that much damage out. And this was AoE. So this was like insane in raids and stuff like that. But in PvP, the 30% damage increase, I think you had Rune of Power as well. I think you could like one-shot with this. But you would just do an absolute truckload of damage and kill people. So yeah, it was a massive one-shot macro for mages, and it was quite funny, to be honest. It was quite funny. And I obviously had that key bound to something. I don't think I ever one-shot people, though. That's too much. But I remember Warlords of Draenor, and I remember doing arenas on my mage, and this was the very first 2v1 that I ever won. Now, this is the one that I remember more so than any other. Mainly because it was a pure 2v1. I didn't have a partner. It was just a skirmish and stuff like that, so it's nothing too major. But it was against a rogue and a hunter. And as a mage, it's quite annoying going up against these classes, rogue especially. But yeah, I did well with my CCs. I was constantly CCing the hunter. I reset the fight after I killed one of them to get, a drink topped up to full and stuff like that, get cooldowns back. And I was really proud. I was really proud of this 2v1, and it was good. It was good fun. So during Draenor, what I also remember is having a very old PC. And this PC was handed down to me. It's obviously an older one, a few years old by that time, I believe. Still worked on WoW. But every time I wanted to go into Ashran, and Ashran being a constant thing on, it's a constant living PvP brawl that's just above your city within Draenor, it would take 10 minutes-ish to load every character that's currently in Ashran. So it would be in stages. It would be nothing. You can just hear spells flying. And then it would be, you see spell animations start flying, like some of them. So you'll see like a Wrath fly off, and then you'll see like a Moonfire, maybe a Serpent Sting somewhere, just randomly. And then you'd get a few more animations, a few more spell animations. Then you'd constantly see people just dot. So think of it like someone's filling in something, and you just see at the back of the Horde, like the Horde group, you have a Blood Elf, and then a Tauren pops in, and then an Orc, and then you see another Tauren, a Troll, a Blood Elf, a Goblin, and they've just constantly file all the way up until your character model finally is rendered and stuff like that. So it did take a while to render in, and I remember constantly, okay, I need a new PC. It's time to get a new PC, which I did the following Christmas and stuff like that. And that's the one that I'm currently using now to actually record this. So it's really cool. It's gone from gaming PC to my little podcast PC, which I'm happy about, to be honest. Now, garrisons were obviously a massive part of Draenor. I remember them well. I remember constantly sitting in my garrison, doing all of the work shipments, the mining, the herbing. I didn't do the fishing. Ugh, boring. I hate fishing. I can't stand just sitting there and waiting for this thing to bob. I have to be more active in a profession. So garrisons were really good. I enjoyed them personally. I can see why it was a massive flawed design, because it didn't encourage interaction at all. I just liked it because it gave me gold, and it was something there that was mine. Now, obviously, everyone else had a garrison. Everyone else could have had the exact same buildings, but it's my garrison. I get to invite people in. I get to be invaded by a certain faction if you were hostile to them, etc. And I could customize the different statues that I had in it. Now, something that I do remember in the garrison is the pet battles. And what I constantly do is do the daily pet battles in there. And one Christmas, I was in a very friendly but small sort of guild, and I decided to sort of get gifts for everyone. And this gift would just be, a few level 25 pets here and there. And I'd be constantly doing this for weeks and weeks, grinding up the pet levels and stuff like that, just to pass out to guildies. And I really enjoyed it, because it was just something to pass the time. It was something to do pretty much within the garrison that wasn't just very selfish and stuff like that. And pet battles I was sort of enjoying at the time, because WoD had such a lack of content. It's something that I really enjoyed, because I could log on, I had a purpose to log on, I could just do this quest, there was no pressure to it, I could do my sort of garrison stuff, my daily stuff, and log off, nothing too sort of major. Arenas were part of my daily, Warlords of Draenor, content, but not as much so. Moving on to Legion. Now, Legion, I don't know what to say about it. It's an amazing expansion, not gonna lie. So, I mained mage in Legion, and I also picked up a monk in Legion. Now, the monk was a healer, because I liked the mobility that mage had, and monk was very mobile as well, especially for a healer. And I wanted something that wasn't a DPS. I did want to try out healing, and I actually healed in Rated Battlegrounds. This is what I used the monk for, Rated Battlegrounds. I liked the constant soothing mists, I liked the cocoons, I liked the renewal, I liked everything about the monk healing class, and it felt very smooth to me, as well as very mobile, agile, that kind of thing. So, arenas obviously were a bit different. Everything was so ramped up in terms of numbers. I didn't necessarily know if I was doing loads of damage or not. So arenas, I didn't necessarily care about rating at the time. I just played them for fun. So I didn't know if I was doing the most damage. I didn't know if I was outputting the most at DPS or trading cooldowns well and stuff like that. So it was very much just a fun sort of thing. But Legion numbers were so ramped up, it was unreal. You were hitting for millions, so you could hit someone for about 5 million, and you'd just be like, okay, that's a decent hit. Whereas if you crit, say, in TBC like 5k, it's like, oh, that's a big crit, nice. So yeah, the number comparison is absolutely insane. Class halls were very much something that I loved. Again, I liked garrisons in Warlords of Draenor. Class halls were just a better version of them, to be honest. It's a class hall. Like, your class is the only one allowed in this place, and it's very much class specific, which made it perfect. It had loads of elements from the classes, so the mage one had loads of portals, loads of different water elementals, different floating books and stuff like that. The rogue one was very secretive, very much a stealth operation and stuff like that. Absolutely insane. The class halls incorporated everything that the class was, and that's what was perfect about them and what made them better than garrisons. Artifacts. I remember doing the Fellow Malorn artifact, going to Icecrown Citadel, back where I killed my very first raid boss, or at least I remembered, and grabbing these massive powerful weapons in lore off of mobs that again held lore purposes and stuff like that. It was very good. It was amazing. I love the monk class and the mage, the mobility that it brought with the arenas, the battlegrounds and stuff that I did with them. And the mage tower is also something I remember from Legion. Now, I did this on a couple characters, I believe. I did this on my mage, and I did this on my monk. I definitely did this on my monk, I know that. The one that I'm upset about that I didn't do is Druid, but we're going to get to that. We're getting that. We're getting that back in 9.1.5, and I'm really excited for it. Mage Tower was obviously a really tough challenge. So it pushed you to your absolute class limit, and you got a special appearance for your artifact weapon in this time, and it was well worth it. It really pushed you as a player. It was really challenging, and I do remember just not being able to complete some. I tried the Arcane Mage and stuff like that. The Arcane Mage I'd never played before, and I just couldn't do it. It required mastery of an arcane. It required being an Arcane Mage, and I just wasn't. I was more of a Fire Mage, a Frost Mage, and that kind of thing. Arcane never really sat well with me in the playstyle that it had. Moving on to BFA. BFA, I mained my Mage again and my Rogue. So this is the third expansion running, where my mage was my main. Arenas, I did a lot more of these arenas. This is when we started to pick up the arenas a lot more so and get the rewards from them. So the mounts after every PvP season, we got every single one of them from Battle for Azeroth. And War Mode and Campaign is something that I actually remember fondly from Battle for Azeroth, mainly because it was the first iteration of it ever being introduced. So you were out in the world and you were constantly PvPing if you opted to be in this War Mode. You didn't necessarily, and if you felt like you didn't want to, you can just opt out. It's that kind of thing. And it was amazing. It was basically enabling your PvP flag, but you have to stick to it if you're outside of the city. The campaign, obviously, is the war campaign, so you'd be going to the different faction zones. So Zandalar for Horde, or you'd be going to Zandalar for the Alliance, and you'd be going to Kul Tiras for the Horde. And obviously, if you're in war mode, you get a lot more opportunities to fight Alliance or Horde, depending on your faction. And what the war mode brought was these like crate drops as well. Like a plane would fly overhead in one of the zones, and a crate would drop, and this crate offered you certain currencies, pieces of gear, and that kind of thing, and you would fight over the crates and stuff like that. So it was really fun to do, to be honest, and see, and just to have that sort of or PvP aspect within the world itself really made my time in BFA a bit better, because BFA for me wasn't the best expansion and I didn't enjoy it as other people did. But I don't really think many people enjoyed it anyway, so, you know. So Shadowlands, the current expansion, I moved away from Mage. I went back to my original route, which is my Druid. So Druid is now my main, and Paladin is my alt at the moment, or my main alt. I have a few other level 60s and stuff like that, but Paladin is my second alt. And Arenas and Shadowlands I find extremely fun. I'm not going to lie, I like the volatile aspect of it all, where something can just get blown up within, like, not even seconds, like a second. And I really enjoy it, because there's no Battle for Azeroth, there's no Legion arenas where you're constantly going to 60% dampening. Some games still do, don't get me wrong. Like, if you're playing 2v2, some games might go to 60% dampening. But Shadowlands can be so explosive in terms of its PvP. That's what makes it so enjoyable for me. It's absolutely amazing. Obviously, the Covenants are very much like class halls from Legion, and kind of like Draenor garrisons. But Covenants are the sanctums where you hang out with other people from your Covenant. They also provide the abilities that we use within Shadowlands quite often. So Convoke the Spirits for me, also Divine Toll for my Paladin, and stuff like that. And these are what allow you to have such explosive bursts of damage. I really hope they don't take this out of the game. I really hope that they offer in next expansions different powers that enable you to change the way that you play your class a lot more so. So Druids can go with a Maldraxxus and sort of more dot orientated build, and slowly whittle your enemy down and stuff like that, whereas Night Fae Druids can go with a more explosive build but be a bit weaker in terms of their tankiness and stuff like that. So it's really fun, and Shadowlands is just great right now. In terms of the PvP aspect, I love it, and that's what I enjoy about it. But in terms of content being released, they need to do more. They really do. It's a massive drought at the moment for them. But Shadowlands as a whole is what I remember mostly, mainly because it is the latest expansion, and it's the one where I've started to get into arenas more so than what I did in BFA. Sort of BFA, I was learning the ropes more with the ratings and, you know, the seasons and stuff like that. And Shadowlands, I've taken this on and basically know everything to do with the arenas and stuff like that now. Mythics are also something that I looked into in Shadowlands. So Boomkin and Feral, I play both. I play all of the different specializations. I enjoy everything about Druid, to be honest. But Mythics are something that I've only just looked into. They came out in Legion, and in 9.0 I did loads of Mythics. I got my Mythic seasonal mount. I have yet to do the 9.1, mainly because, again, PvE content isn't necessarily my favourite. It is very much PvP orientated for me. My life in WoW has been long. It feels like it's been a millennia, to be honest. I've racked up so many hours, so many days game time in this. I'm sure most people have as well. It's not an uncommon thing. You've seen so many iterations of WoW. I have personally. Other people, if they've gone through the same expansions I have, they would have as well. That you pick out the individual things that you like about the expansion and you hone in on them. So arenas and PvP for me is what does it for me. Some people might like, say, the dungeons that are released in patches in different expansions. Some people might like the raids that they look forward to in every expansion, every single patch, that kind of thing. But it's... I don't know how to describe it. It's great. I always find a way to enjoy the game in its current state, and that's kind of what my life in WoW has become. You've got to find something that you enjoy within the game, and don't necessarily look at the aspects that don't enthrall you or intrigue you, that kind of thing. Again, I've mained Druid 3 expansions. I've mained Mage 3 expansions. I have a couple, blips here and there with a Priest Warrior and Mr. Pandaria. Not sure what I'm doing there. I'm going absolutely crazy with that. But it's been long and it's been great, and I can say that I've experienced every single expansion. Those people who say like, oh, you clearly weren't around in vanilla time, and it's like, well, we've seen what Classic is. I've completed it. That's the thing. I completed Classic. The only thing that I didn't was get rank 14, but I did enough of it to know that I didn't want to spoil the game for myself to get rank 14. And it's one of them things. Like I said, my life in WoW has been great. I have enjoyed every moment of it. Well, I say every moment. I'm sure I have some repressed memories of yelling at people and people pissing me off, but everyone has that. Alright, I'm going to stop the rant. Thank you all very much for listening. Hi there, Warcraft fans. It's just me again. Wanted to thank you for your time in listening to this week's podcast. I love making these for you all, and I couldn't be happier in doing so. Seeing the downloads go up and up each week is amazing. You can show your support more by something as simple as rating this episode, or by dropping me a question via email that I can answer in a later podcast. To take it that extra step further and really show that you love the content that's being produced, you can check out the Pig and Whistle Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee page. Either of these would be a massive help to continue what I'm doing right now for you guys. Thank you all very much for your time, and go with Valor, friends.